All right. Well, in today's video, I want to talk about the best audit certifications for your career. Now, this is, again, it's tailored towards your career. And I want to talk about some of the things because sometimes people just ask a coworker, do a Google search, and then they start going down a path of spending money and studying for certifications when that may not be the best thing for their career. It might be good for somebody else's career, but it might not be the best for your career. And so in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about why this matters and what certifications or which ones might be right for you, and kind of give you a guideline for how you can decide what is best for you. Okay, because it's not as simple as going and doing a Google search and seeing some article that says what the top certifications are and then picking from that list. And I'll explain more about that in just a minute. But some things that you probably need to consider. Things like, where are you in your career? Are you just starting off? Are you a manager? Are you a head of internal audit? That's going to make a difference as to what might be the best for you. What's your career path? Where do you want to go in your career? How do you want to specialize, or do you want to be more of a generalist? That's going to make a big difference as to what you might select. What topics are most important for your skills development? Because again, there's certain skills that are in need in internal audit. And so you have to kind of decide maybe if some of those terms or topics are relevant for you, on which one is going to be best for you. What's your educational experience background? That's very important. And I'm going to explain more about that. And then, again, kind of how much time and money do you want to invest in getting certifications? So let's jump in. And your first question might be, who is this crazy guy and why should I even listen to him? Well, I've been in internal audit for over 30 years. I was the chief audit executive at several companies, which means I was the person who was hiring and in charge of internal audit staffs. And so I have some experience from that standpoint as to which certifications were most important for me that I looked for when I was hiring. And I've also done a lot of training. I've developed certifications, very familiar with the certification space as well. And so that's a little bit about me. And again, you can, Google stalk me or whatever you want to do and see who I really am and if you really should trust me. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. Just listen to this entire video and think about what is best for you, because ultimately you are the only one who can decide what is best for you. Okay. Now, let's jump in. So why certifications, right? Well, you probably already know that certifications allow you to make more money, right? So there's been a lot of different studies that have been done, and somewhere, I think certified people earn 40 to 50% more than people who don't have certifications. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. One is people have invested more in their career. Because of that, they have more skills. And so people are willing to pay more for those skills. But there is also kind of a side thing on that, is people who have certifications have typically been in their career for a little bit longer. And so they're going to earn more money. But there is definitely a correlation between earning more money and having certifications. Now, certifications also prove to people that you actually know what you're talking about. It's something on paper. It's something as a digital credential that people can, for the most part, rely on. You're saying that you know how to do this, but when you also have a certification that goes along with that, they're more likely to actually believe you. And I'll give you an example. A woman reached out to me several years ago, and she was going through the job interviewing process. And The job that she was interviewing for, agile auditing, was a very important skill that they were looking for. And so she had done, the audit shop that she was in before had done agile auditing. And so, when they asked, she said, "Yeah, I know how to do it." But they wouldn't believe her, right? And so she ended up reaching out and getting the Certified Agile Auditor Professional certification to be able to prove, so that next time, if she said, "Hey, I know how to do this," and they say, "Well, we don't believe you," you can say, "Well, here's my certification that proves that I know what I'm talking about." Okay, so there's a benefit that way in being able to prove what you know. Now, for those of you that are on social media, you may be actively or inactively looking for a better job. Having certifications on your profile will actually also make it more likely that a recruiter will find you, because they will be searching for certain terms and certain certifications, and invite you then to interview or put in your application for a new job. So it makes it much more likely that somebody is going to find you, or even if you put in a resume, they're probably always going to go and check your social media to see if your social media actually matches what is on your resume. Okay, so important from that standpoint too. Now, why else? Well, we know that certifications also open up your career path. So most of the time, individuals, if they start off, let's say, in internal audit, they get in for a few years, but they don't qualify for a promotion within their company unless they have a certification. Now, you may not believe that's true, but a recent survey that I did, and I'm going to come out with the results on that shortly, showed that about 80% of people, and these are mainly chief audit executives, people who are hiring for these positions, 80% said it was either required or preferred that people have certifications for when they hire them. Okay, so there's more career progression options. It opens it up and makes it easier for you to be able to get new jobs as well. Okay. So again, that's a little bit about the why we're even talking about certifications. And I know, again, for myself in my own career, I've seen a huge benefit by having certifications myself. Okay. They've opened up different jobs for me and different opportunities career wise as well. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about which certifications may be best for you. Now, I say this, again, most people coming here might want a list of all the different certifications. Don't worry, I have created a list of all the different certifications that would be relevant for you at different levels. So if you're a new auditor or maybe a senior, if you're a manager, if you're a VP or a chief audit executive, and even some by topical area. So if there's certain topics like risk management that you're more interested in, which certifications would be relevant for that? Okay, so that's to come. Don't worry, you'll get a link about that, so you can see that. But most people, when they're looking at this, they might look to a colleague and say, "Well, what certifications do you have, or what do you think the best ones are?" Or you may go out and do an internet search and say, "Best internal audit certifications." Now, before I recorded this video, I did that. I went out to Google and I typed that in. And I was surprised, and I'll tell you why I was surprised. Okay. When you type in that search term, obviously there's ads from ISACA and the IIA for their certifications. I was not surprised by that. What I was surprised by is most of the other hits that were in the top 10 or 20 results were articles that were written by organizations that know nothing about internal audit. Now, how do I know that? Well, because again, as I read through, a lot of the articles were wrong. They were listing certain certifications that no longer exist. They were listing certifications that have nothing to do with internal audit. And I even found a lot of them were just using it as clickbait, because you would read down the article and at the bottom it would say things like, if you're not happy with your current foreign exchange platform, switch to ours today. So it was used as a way to draw people into their website and then try to sell them something completely different than what your Google search was about. Now, I found that disconcerting. And if you have done that, you may have found that as well, right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, is to share the truth with you, or at least what my experience has been and what I see as the truth, okay? So you may go and do an internet search, and that may not lead to very good results. Another thing that people do in trying to figure out which one to go for is they may ask a colleague, what do you have? Or they may look at certifications that most people have and just decide, well, if most people have it, then that must be the best thing for me. And they just start jumping into it. Now, there can be some danger in doing that, and let me explain to you why. Okay, let's think about, let's use an example of, you need to buy a new car. You need to buy a new vehicle to be able to get you to and from work. Okay, not much different than a certification, really, right? Because it's a tool that helps you in earning money and in doing your job. So again, let's say that I need to buy a new vehicle. And so I go out and I start looking at maybe what's the vehicle that most people buy. Because if most people buy it, then maybe that's right for me. Now, in the United States, the top 3 passenger vehicles, right, that are sold, the ones that sell the most in the US each year, are a Ford F-150 pickup, a Chevy Silverado pickup, and a Dodge Ram pickup. Those are the top 3 selling passenger vehicles in the United States. So if I just stopped at that point and said, well, most people are buying pickups, so a pickup must be right for me, and I just go out and buy a pickup, that may not be the right answer for me, right? Now, if my job is in construction, if my job is, something that maybe requires me to haul things, or, I need a 4-wheel drive for it, or I just like pickups because I'm a pickup person, then a pickup might be the right choice for me, but it may not be, because all of those vehicles actually cost a lot of money, right? I was surprised the last time my dad bought a pickup, how much he paid for it. And he paid more for his pickup than I paid for my first house. Okay, so these are expensive vehicles to begin with. Now, I might look at it and say, well, I really don't have a need for a pickup. All I really need to do is get to and from work in something that, gets me there, that's economical. And so maybe something like a Toyota Corolla might actually be the better option. I'm paying a lot less money. I'm paying less for insurance. I'm paying less for gasoline than I would if I got a pickup. Okay. And so again, if you're making your decision just because of the number of people who have the certification, that may not be the right decision for you. In fact, the certifications that most people know about in internal audit, the certified internal auditor, CPA, certified public accountant, and the certified information systems auditor, CISA, those are all very expensive and take time to get. They're the equivalent of buying a pickup. Now, you may need a pickup, but a Corolla may do just fine for what you need to do, right? So, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that as well as we get going here, so that you have an idea of deciding what might be best for you, because certified internal auditor might be best for you. But I just want to make sure that you realize what you're getting yourself into. Because in that, for instance, most people, it takes 2 to 5 years to get. You have over $2,000 just in buying some study material that you can read, and in paying the testing fees, because you have to do at least 3 tests, right? And the reality is most people don't pass those tests the first time. In fact, only about 10% of people actually pass the exams the first time they take them. What happens is usually people have to take them multiple times, which means you're spending more in retesting fees, and then you have to pay the IIA for your membership for the rest of your life. So there's a lot of hidden fees in some of the certifications like that one, okay? And in fact, a lot of people, probably about 60 to 70% of people, hear this again, 60 to 70% of people who start trying to get the CIA end up giving up and quitting and never get it. Why? Because over 60% of people fail the exams each time. And after you fail an exam over and over again, most people just give up. Because the reality is, you have a life, you have a job. You don't have hundreds or thousands of hours of time to study and keep paying to take exams over and over and over and over and over again, right? So one of the reasons why I said, well, what's your educational experience level is important, because some of those, again, like the CIA, requires a certain level of education. You have to have a certain education level and degree, and or a certain number of years of experience before you can actually even get it. And so a lot of people, they're trying to get a job in internal audit, but they don't have experience, so they can't get certified that way. So they're kind of stuck, right? And I'll explain a little bit later some ways to get around that. The other one, a couple of the other ones, certified public accountant. That is great. It's a license here in the US. It's not a certification. It's a license. So right now I'm actually licensed as a CPA in Idaho and California and Arizona, where I live. Okay, but that's a license that required me to take, at the time, 4 exams. And then I have to pay the state each year for my license. Okay. And again, it worked for me because I was in public accounting. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know is they're like, I want to be a CPA. Well, at least in the US, to become a CPA, you have to have a master's degree in accounting. Did you hear that? A master's degree in accounting and at least 2 years of experience, which means that for most people, right, if your degree was in marketing, if your degree was in finance, even if you have a bachelor's in accounting, they won't even let you take the exam unless you have a master's degree. Now, that excludes that as an option for most people. The CISA is another one, right, where again, exam that you have to take, it's a hard exam. But what a lot of people don't realize is they require, I think, 5 years of experience auditing IT before you can even take it, which means you have to be in your career already and have a significant IT and IT audit background in order to even take the exam. Now, for a lot of people, especially if you're in the first year or two of being out of college, that's not really an option for you. And so I'm going to give you some other options and talk about some of that later as well. But, again, for you to start thinking about what really is best for you, right? And again, just because most people have it, just because a lot of people know about it, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best for you. You have to make the decision that is best for you, but there are other options. Okay. Now, again, let's talk a little bit about some of these things that I talked about. So we just talked about education and experience, right? So again, if depending on what your educational background is, what your experience level is going to determine whether or not you can even take one of the certification exams. But also, depending on what level you're at, will determine whether or not it's valuable for you. So, I'll give you an example. Some people that I know who are heads of internal audit, they're the chief audit executive. And I've had some of them that have said, I probably should get my CIA. And I said, well, why do you think you need to get it? And they're like, well, I think I need to have a certification. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about this for a minute. First off, the CIA is very academic. The more experience you have, the harder it is to pass the exam. The topics that are included on the CIA exam are very basic. They're very, very basic. And so for someone who is, let's say, 20 years into their career that is a head of internal audit, they will not learn anything new by going through and studying and taking that certification. Okay. Instead, something like a certified chief audit executive would be much more relevant for somebody at that point in their career. In fact, it's actually cheaper and a lot quicker to get that option than to go through the whole CIA process. And so that's why, again, you want to see where are you at in your career and what do you want your career to look like? Because this is another thing that often people will come to me and say, Jason, I want to get my CIA, my CPA, and my CFA. And I say, great. Tell me why. Okay. Well, they're really good certifications. Yes, they are. Okay. But again, why do you think you want to get it? And why do you want to get that combination of certifications? Because again, what I will tell you, CIA is mainly for people in internal audit, people that are following the IIA standards. Okay. CPA is mainly for public accountants, right? It was designed for people who are actually in public accounting that do public statement audits. Now, it's also very relevant inside as an internal auditor, but that's not what it was intended for. It still helps you and it still provides you with guidance on, how to follow audit standards and how to actually audit. And so it's very, very good for you to get. And the combination of those two is great. But the reality is it will take you years to get both of them. And again, remember, you would have to have a master's in accountancy to even sit for your CPA. Now, the last one this person brought up was the CFA. And many of you, maybe haven't even heard of what that is. It's a chartered financial analyst, and it has nothing to do with internal audit. And so, again, I'm familiar with it. I know people who have it. But the application for that is mainly for people who work in financial services, specifically at companies who are developing things like mutual funds. Okay. So CIA, CPA, CFA, would it be beneficial for someone in internal audit? Sure. The combination of all three of those would be relevant if you plan to be an internal auditor in a financial service firm that does that. But if you're thinking financial service in general, like a bank, other places, CFA probably would not be relevant for you to get. Okay, so again, you also want to think about not just which certification, but maybe which combination of certain certifications do you want to get that will get you to the point where you want to be in your career. So again, another example, if you want to be involved in fraud auditing, not in committing fraud, but in actually auditing and finding fraud, then something like a certified fraud examiner may be a very good option for you. Now, it's not an important option to have for most people in internal audit, because maybe only 5 or 10% of people in internal audit actually even deal with fraud or do fraud investigations. So you can get it, but it's probably not going to help you in your career, and it's not necessarily something that employers are looking for. Okay? And so that's one thing to kind of think about, as you're going through this. And since I'm recording this live, I might take some time to kind of see some of the comments that are coming through and answer some of those questions as well. Okay. So there's I think in making reference, anyway, the comment says these boards, and again, I'm guessing it's referring to things like IIA and ISACA, is disgruntled people who say they are preserving the certification designation by making it exclusive, by moving the bar higher. With technology involved, how practical are these requirements? What do you think, Jason? So here's my take and my philosophy on certifications. A lot of people are making them harder and harder to get. In fact, a little trick that the IIA did a few years ago, they came out with one called the CRMA, Certified in Risk Management Assurance, I think is what it was called, CRMA. And you used to be able to get the CRMA by itself, and it was easier to get than the CIA. And so a lot of people started getting the CRMA instead of the CIA. Well, they didn't like that. And so they changed the requirements that you have to have CIA before you can get CRMA. Okay. Which crazy in my opinion. They also got rid of all of the other certifications that they had. So now they only have two, the CIA and the CRMA. But again, you have to get CIA before you can get CRMA. So that's an example of raising the bar. It's organizations who think, they believe that by making it harder, that there must be more value, because if fewer people have it, then there's more value in the certification. Okay. And that's a classic economics faux pas, okay, of supply and demand. Yes, economically, if something is in high demand, if you limit the supply of it, the price of it will go up. Okay, that's underlying economics. But the reality is, does limiting the supply actually inherently give that thing any more value? No. All it does is it limits who can get it. So the rich people who have money can buy it. The poor people who don't are the ones who get left out. Okay. Now, I take a different view on certifications because, again, I believe they are relevant for helping people to get jobs, to earn more money, and also to better protect your organizations. So for me, I believe the world is a better place the more people who are certified, because that means that more people are going to have the technical skills, more people are going to have gone through it, more people are going to provide higher quality work to their organizations. And so I think it's important for more people to be certified and not less. And that's why some of the options that I'm going to talk about are actually things that are easier, much easier for people to get, regardless of where you are in the world. Okay, because honestly, I know a lot of people, the pricing for things like CIA, when you start adding everything up and you factor in your study time, it's $10,000 worth of time and money. Part of that is writing a check or your credit card, and part of it is the time away from your family or time away from your job in order to study. Okay. And $10,000 is a lot of money for people, even in the US. And so, again, if you're in a developing country and have to find $10,000 to get one of these certifications, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I find it actually abhorrent that organizations are jacking it up, raising the bar, making it more expensive so they can earn more money and disadvantage the people who really need the help, which is you listening to this and your organization in having higher quality auditors. So that was my spiel, and I guess it must have resonated because I got another comment that came through and said spot on. So at least that's my opinion, and that's why I think that I know that there are a lot of other options for people in internal audit that are out there. It's just most of you may not even know about it because a lot of these other bigger organizations spend millions of dollars on advertising. Why? Because they make millions of dollars by making you take the tests over and over again, as an example. Now, that's again my opinion. Your opinion can differ. Don't believe me, right? Again, ultimately, I want you to do what is best for you in your career. I just want you to go into it with your eyes wide open so that you know exactly what you're getting into. Okay, so let me go through and talk about a few more of these things that I kind of promised you that I talk about today. So that's a little bit about, your educational and experience background. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could get a certification that didn't require a certain number of years of experience, didn't require education? All you had to do was show up, learn the information, take the test, and pass it, and you got it? Absolutely. And there are those options that are available especially through cRisk Academy that I'm going to share with you a little bit more. And you can see on my screen that ondemand.criskacademy.com is where you can go to find some of those things. But I'll also provide you with a listing of ones that I think are right based on your level of experience. Now, back to kind of the whole idea of moving the bar higher. Another similar thing for me, because for a while I thought I was going to become an attorney before I became an accountant. Okay. Now, the law in the United States is the same where they have continued to increase the bar. And so, for example, I have a bachelor's in accountancy. I have a master's in business administration. So I have a master's degree in business, right? I understand the law very well because I've dealt with it a lot with contracts, with other legal things over my career. But no matter how much I want to, I cannot become an attorney in the United States. Why? Because there is a requirement that I would have to graduate from a law school. So I would have to get my JD, Juris Doctorate, in law from an accredited law firm or law university before I can even sit for the bar exam. Now, I don't like that. Not that I want to be an attorney, but to me, if I can take and pass the exam and not have to go to college, why couldn't I become a lawyer? Right? That's my opinion. And so again, that's why some of the certifications I'm going to share with you are that way. You don't have to have a certain education. You don't have to have a certain years of experience or certain jobs that you already had. All you have to do is show up, learn the material, take the exam. And the exam is not even set up to be tricky so that people have to retake the exam, because that's not the intention, right? The intention is to make sure that you have a basic knowledge of the information. And as long as you do, boom, you get certified, right? Okay. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit too. So where are you in your career? Okay. And we talked a little bit about that before, where I said, if you're head of internal audit, CIA is not going to help you in your audit. life because you already know the information. You're going to spend a lot of time studying for it, and you're not going to really learn anything new. And so in the listing, that I'll provide, I listed out, based on where you're at in your career, there's probably certain things that are more important, right? So again, maybe if you're in a manager role, it's probably more important to have some supervisory and management related topics that you know about and that you can get certificates for. That's going to be relevant for you as a manager. It wouldn't be relevant for you as a brand new auditor, right? And so again, you have to kind of determine where are you currently at in your career and also where do you want to go, right? So maybe if you're a senior auditor and the next role that you want is to become an audit manager, well, then maybe getting something like a certificate in internal audit management is a good thing because then you can have it on your LinkedIn profile, you can have it on your resume. You go and interview for a manager level position, and they're going to ask you, what management experience do you have? And you probably have had some supervisory, but you can also say, well, I also got this certificate in internal audit management, right? So there are ways, again, for you to help you get to the next step in your career as well. And so depending on where you're at in your career, the first 5 years of your career, I might suggest certain things. The next 5 or 10, I might recommend something else. If you're a head of audit, I would recommend something else completely different, right? And so that's one thing that you have to think about in your career, okay? And which of the certifications would be most relevant for you because of that, okay? Now, again, what is the career path that you want to take? Okay, because again, if you want to, let's say, focus your efforts on things like SOX testing, right? If that's the area that interests you, that you like, that you want to, become a manager over SOX auditing, great. Well, then getting something topical, right, like a certificate in SOX would be something that is relevant for you because it's topical in what you're wanting to do, right? Maybe it's something like risk management. Maybe, you're interested in risk management, you really want to do more risk-based auditing, you really want to understand risk management because maybe at some point you want to move into a risk management role. Maybe you go from internal audit into risk management or into another GRC type of position, governance, risk, and compliance type of a role. Well, then maybe, something else might be more relevant for you, like the certified risk-based internal auditor, or getting something like a certificate in risk management. Maybe something that's more relevant for you because topically it's where you want to move in your career. Okay. And the more specialized you want to get, like I said, if you want, maybe data analytics or fraud or even cyber or some of these things that you want to focus in on your career, those are going to be certificates and certifications that are more relevant for you to take now so that you can prepare for a role in those areas. Okay. And what I'll tell you as an example is if cyber security, as an example, is an area that you want to go, certifications outside of the internal audit space are probably going to be more helpful for you than ones that are actually developed and intended for internal auditors, because you're wanting to get a deep understanding of that particular topic area that, yes, you may use as a subject matter expert within an internal audit group, but reality is you may be better off actually taking a more cyber related job within your organization because you may earn more money. You may find it more fun if that's a topic that really interests you. Okay. So, and one other thing for you to kind of think about here too, that I think a lot of times people don't bring up, and I'm just going to be honest with you. Again, my opinion, my experience. Uh, if becoming a chief audit executive is important to you, if that's the role that you see yourself in ultimately, I would discourage you from becoming too technical in any specific topical area. Things like risk management, no problem. But for example, it's very difficult for people who are IT audit directors to make the switch to chief audit executive. For some reason, even though they may have some of the skill sets, most people that are hiring for those roles tend to see IT auditors as being too specific, too much in the details, not strategic enough, not general business enough to actually take over the CAE role. And so, again, there's no right or wrong, right? If you love IT audit and that is what you want to do your whole career, you can have a very good career and make it to a director or VP level, maybe in IT audit, but you probably won't have the top job running the internal audit department. Okay, that's just kind of the facts behind that. So, that's kind of on the career path. Where do you want to go? Do you want to be more of a generalist? And if that's the case, then maybe things like internal controls, risk management, those would be important. Maybe agile auditing even. But if you really want to be more technical in areas like cybersecurity, data analytics, fraud, some of those areas, then going down that specific topical area and getting as much information and as many certifications in those areas is probably going to do better for you in your career that way. Okay. And that kind of goes along with the topics that are most important for your skill development as well. Again, if you see yourself at a certain place in your career in 5 years or 10 years from now, you want to start preparing for that. And the certifications are one way to do that. Okay, so go through. I wrote down a few things for me to kind of make sure that I keep track of here on what I've talked to you about. So I've kind of explained a little bit about how you can start to analyze and know what might be right for you. And because you're still listening to this video, obviously this is something that interests you. It's something that's important for you. It's something that you want to figure out. And what I'm going to tell you too is, most people know about what I call the big three: CIA, CPA, CISA. Okay. Most people know about that. If you do research on it, most people are going to say those have been around the longest. Those have the most people in it. So those are the ones you need to get. Well, again, hopefully you've understood from what we've talked about so far, that may be true for you, but it may not be true for you as well, right? If you don't meet the educational or experience requirements, they may be out of reach. If you're trying to get a job in internal audit, again, those are usually only given to people who've been working for a while. You probably want some other options. And there are other options. In fact, there are a lot of other options that are out there that you just may not be aware of. And that's one of the reasons why I put together that listing that I'm going to share with you as well. But also, just wanted to kind of make sure that you're aware of some of the other things that are available and that are out there. And you can find them on cRisk Academy. A lot of these that I'm talking about are on cRisk Academy. Why are they there? Well, because they're new certifications that were developed to be able to help you in your career. They're practical. They don't require educational or experience requirements. They do not have tricky exams. You don't have to repay every year to maintain your certification. You study for it. You get the course, you study for it, you take the exam, you have the certification for your life, right? And they're, again, at affordable prices, anywhere from $300 to $2,000, right? And so, because of that, right, it's for you to try to figure out if one of those might be a better option for you, because they're more practical. And in fact, most people can earn them in 1 to 2 months instead of the 2 to 5 years that it usually takes you for other things. So if you're wanting to get a job quicker, if you're wanting to maybe move to another position within your organization, or maybe get a job at another organization, one of these options may be better for you. And again, it's going to depend on what you want from your career and how much time and effort you actually want to spend in being able to do this. Because the reality is that, most of you have a job, most of you may have a family. And so, you want to invest your time and your money wisely, that is going to be in something where you actually have a payback, right? Okay, let me look. There's another comment here that came in. Let me read through this. Okay, so this is kind of talking about accreditation, which is another topic that kind of comes in this. And I don't have time to get into all of this stuff about accreditation today, because having been in this industry for a long time, a lot of the accreditation companies that are out there are just out to make money, and they don't really provide much of anything. But anyway, so, with this, I think one of the questions is, why most requirements for CA or manager jobs require chartered accountant accreditation, or because chartered accountant is the international equivalent, especially in kind of UK based companies or countries, because chartered accountant, so places like the UK and Australia and even other places in the world use chartered accountants. I think India does as well. But chartered accountant can be viewed similar to CPA here in the US. But the point is, I'm laughing because this has been a point of contention for a long time. And so I'm just going to talk about it. Is if you look at a lot of job descriptions at a very high level, and even other job descriptions, often they ask for CPA preferred and or CIA. And so there has been a consistent preference for CPA over CIA or other things in a lot of job descriptions. Now, why is that? Well, a CPA is a license. So because it's a license given by a state, there's more prestige is not the right word, but there's more weight behind having that than there are in certifications. Now, as I told you, the reality is internal auditors don't have to be CPAs, but there are a lot of internal auditors who are CPAs, because many people, like myself, went into public accounting first, got my CPA, and then came across. Now, people who are in those positions who have a CPA prefer CPA over anything else because that's what they have, right? We always tend to prefer and think that what we have done is the most respectable and the best thing to do. It's not necessary, but it still shows up a lot in job postings. And part of the reason for that is people are lazy and the job postings are outdated. Okay. There's much more, and I've talked to recruiters about this as well. it's not necessarily a requirement. Sometimes people put it in their head that something like CPA or CIA is a requirement, but that's not really the requirement. They're just being lazy. What they're really meaning is, I want somebody who's certified and knows what they're talking about. Well, I'm guessing that there are a lot of people who know what they're talking about who don't have either of those. In fact, this reminds me of a video I did a while ago called "I'm Going to Harvard or Else." Okay. Now, if we look at, and this kind of goes back to this accreditation idea, or the weight, or the most people have it, it's been around for the longest. Well, Harvard University is the oldest educational institution in the United States. It started in 1630. So if we go on an assumption that what's been around the longest is the best, right? If that's a line of thinking that you agree with, then really the only option for going to university in the United States should be Harvard University, because it's been around the longest. It's probably the most well-known. If you look at certain institutions here in the US, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, MIT, right? Those are some of the universities that people know from around the world. But they may not be the best option for people either. The reality is, it's very expensive to go to Harvard. It's very hard to get into Harvard. Now, just like our CPA, CIA versus any other certifications, let's think about this. If you're hiring somebody and they went to a different university than Harvard, they didn't go to Harvard, right? I didn't go to Harvard. I did my undergrad at Boise State University. I did my MBA through the University of Southern California. Now, you may or may not have heard of those institutions. They're respected and accredited institutions. In fact, USC is in the top 20, usually in the top 20 for MBA schools in the country. So I didn't get my MBA from Harvard. I got my MBA from USC. Now, is my MBA from USC, does that mean I don't know anything compared with people from Harvard? No. In fact, I've worked with a lot of people from Harvard, and hey, my degrees work just fine. It got me exactly where I needed to be in my career. And in fact, what's interesting is, with technology today, you don't have to go to traditional brick and mortar, which is probably a great way for us to kind of end, because I know this video is getting a little bit longer. But there's other options, right? And I told you, as a matter of fact, that, Harvard has been around the longest. They don't have the most enrollment. They don't have the biggest enrollment, right? In fact, do you know what university in the United States has the largest enrollment? It's the University of Phoenix. The University of Phoenix, okay? Which is mainly an online and remote option for learning, because that is the trend, right? In fact, working professionals usually, don't have time. I mean, I could never, sure, I'd love to have my PhD, but I'm not going to give up my businesses and go work, on my PhD for 3 or 4 years without earning money. That doesn't make sense for me, right? It doesn't make sense for a lot of people. And a lot of these new options, especially through cRisk Academy, are online. They're available 24/7. So it doesn't matter if you live in India, if you live in Africa, if you live in Europe, if you live in South America, North America, Asia. It doesn't matter. It's online. You can access it anywhere that you can access the internet from. You can study and take the exams from there. You don't have to go into a testing center to take the exams. You just take it online through your computer. And again, there's checks and things so that there's the integrity behind the certification. But that's another example of where, just like with Harvard, right? Don't think that just because a certification has been around longer or more people have it, that that's the only place where you can get benefit or value. In fact, the more practical things actually will provide you with much, much better uh, information and help in your career. And so, again, one of the reasons why I went to Boise State, well, I grew up there, but I actually went away to school for my first year and then came back to Boise State. And one of the reasons it's not that well known, it is more so now than it was when I went there because of their football program. But it wasn't that well known. But in the Pacific Northwest where I lived, it was actually one of the better schools. And one of the reasons that made it so good is most of the people who were the professors actually had real life experience, right? A lot of them, had masters or had their PhD, but they had done things in real life. So, as an example, one of my professors used to be the CFO of one of the largest transportation companies in the United States. Well, he could provide me with a little different perspective and things that were more practical than a professor who had only spent their time in academia and didn't have any practical real world experience. In fact, I will tell you, one of the professors, while I was there, she was that way. She only had academic. And guess who had the most complaints about her in the whole department? Her. And so they actually made her take a 2-year sabbatical and go get a real job before she could come back and teach again, because that was important for them. Theory is great, but at the end of the day, you all have to do things practical. And a lot of these other new certifications are practical. Now, again, if you're interested in them, you can find them on cRisk Academy. And like I said, I'll list also, all the different ones, including ones from there, but other ones that I think are relevant as well for internal audit based on level and topic that you can get access to. But, things like a certified practitioner in internal audit, very similar to CIA, only a much more practical approach to it that doesn't require all the hoops. Certificate in internal audit fundamentals, certificate risk-based internal auditor, certificate in internal audit data analytics, certificate in internal audit supervision, certified agile auditor professional, certified risk-based auditor, certificate in fraud-based internal auditing. So just throwing out a few of the different ones that, again, you may not even be aware of. And there's a lot more in that list that I've compiled. So to kind of wrap up, again, as you're looking at this and trying to figure out, well, what certification is best for you, right? Think about some of the things that we talked about today and ask yourself some of the questions, things like, where are you at in your career? Where do you want to go, right? What makes most sense for you, right? How much time and money do you want to invest? So just like we talked about at the beginning of the video, right? I could decide that I am going to buy a pickup truck, because that's what most people have, is a pickup truck. And I'm going to buy a Ford pickup truck because, people buy pickup trucks. It's the number one selling, and Ford Motor Company has been around about as long as anybody has. So that must be the right option for me. And I can go spend $80,000 and buy a Ford pickup truck. And it's going to get me to and from work. I'm not going to get as good a gas mileage. I'm going to spend more money. I'm going to spend more in insurance and in gasoline. But I can do that. That's an option I can do. Or I could actually sit down and say, what really is most important to me? What do I really need? Right? And I could instead decide, hey, Toyota Corolla, great car. Maybe it only cost me $25,000 instead of $80,000. Better gas mileage, lower insurance. Right? Now, other people might look at you and say, well, Jason, you're driving a little Toyota Corolla instead of a big manly truck. Well, it doesn't matter to me. And again, it may not matter to you, where people may look at you and say, well, why didn't you get CIA, or why didn't you get CPA? Well, because you decided that these other things were maybe better for you, and you've designed a career path that actually makes sense for you and allows you to invest, a modest amount of money and time in order for you to be able to get what you need from your career. So with that, I'm going to wrap up, because I know this has gone longer than most of my live videos do. But again, thanks for listening. There are many other options out there. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Check out the things that are available on demand.criskacademy.com, and look for that listing as well that I've prepared together, that shows you, again, based on your level, based on the topic areas that you're interested in, what some good options would be for you to consider at that point in your career. So with that, I'm going to sign off for today. See ya.